Hello and welcome to Mindful Mondays. One of my objectives for a long time now has been to encourage people in their relationship with God, mostly focused in first and foremost on their prayer life. I have learned a long time ago and have seen it proved over and over again consistently that prayer does not attract crowds. Starting a prayer meeting will bring in less than a handful of people, almost always. Offering a class on how to grow in prayer generally doesn't require one to worry about will I have enough meeting space or enough supplies for the people who show up. And I've seen this to be true across all different kinds of churches across years and years. There are a lot of reasons for this, but I think a big one is that many find prayer either intimidating or boring. They think enjoying prayer is for super spiritual wonder saints, not for average, everyday people. And I think part of why people find prayer boring is the way their prayers are focused. Specifically, I think self-focused prayer gets pretty discouraging. When our prayers are only for and about ourselves, we tend to focus in really hard on what doesn't seem to be working, what we lack, problems we can't fix, character defects that we can't find a way to overcome, etc. In this case, we expend a lot of energy really honing in on a perspective that I am not enough, and maybe even that God is not enough. And because we as human beings, and particularly as modern day Americans, are pretty short-sighted and generally desire instant gratification, answers that take years or even decades to come can look to us like God is not listening, God is not working, God doesn't really care about our situation at all. So we don't want to pray. We feel like we're talking to nothing, like our prayers are bouncing off the ceiling. We feel like we're repeating ourselves and we're not sure that it's making a difference. It seems like maybe prayer is a waste of time, at least for people who aren't wonder wizard prayer people. I found that prayer is much easier, much more purposeful and rewarding, much more interesting and fun, and much more likely to take me to intimate spaces with God if my prayers are not, first and foremost, for me and about me. When I pray for stuff outside of my selfish self, it forces me to notice the plight of other people. I start to see conflicts that I would otherwise miss. I get insights into people's motivations and backgrounds and baggage that are maybe hamstringing them. My own stuff doesn't seem as harsh and unfair when I'm really awakened to the plight of others around me. There are endless angles from which we can pray for others. We can focus in on praying for our friends and family. We can even pray for the people that are only our friends on Facebook, the ones who are saying stuff on the internet that makes our teeth grind. We can pray for them instead of thinking evil of them. We can pray for the people in our own neighborhoods. We can pray for our schools, for our teachers, for our classmates, for our administrators. We can pray for our local and national political leaders. We can pray for our local businesses and even targeted prayers for economic growth and stability. We can pray for our church, and hey, we can pray for other churches, even and especially prayers for churches that we maybe particularly don't appreciate. We can pray for our pastors and church leaders and those tireless saints who serve in children's ministries. Pray for them. We can pray for our coworkers and for the decision makers in our workplaces. We can pray for those who provide us our social safety nets, foster care agencies and foster parents, social security workers and elder care agencies, people providing public aid services and those who decide the policies under which they're going to operate, those who run homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters and even animal shelters. We can pray for our first responders, our police, our firefighters, our emergency medical services. We can pray for our community organizers and those who try to change the world by running nonprofit organizations. We can pray for the most pernicious problems in our culture: drug addiction, sex trafficking, homelessness, violence, abuse of power by those in authority. That's a lot, and I'm just getting started. There is no reason to ever run out of things to say when we're praying, especially when we're praying for others. The cool thing is that when we get out of the habit of focusing our prayers on our selfish selves and start praying for the world around us, God changes our hearts. God increases our compassion. God grows our insight and our wisdom. God shows us where the door is open for us to be part of the solution and not just someone who thinks about the problem. God even heals our brokenness little bit by little bit. There is no danger in praying more for others than we pray for ourselves. I fully believe that as we pick up the mantle of praying for others, God honors that by not only working in the world around us, but also working within the world that is us. If you're bored with prayer, if you're overwhelmed by it, if you run out of things to say, if you're frustrated by prayer, if you're just don't know how to approach it, if it feels like prayer is for other people and not for you, the challenge this week is to just look outside of your selfish self and focus on praying for others, for the world around you, the world you see as you move around, the world you learn about through the news. When you want to complain, pray. When you want to argue, pray. When you think someone should do something, pray. Give it a try and see if it makes prayer less boring and more interesting. And I would love to hear how that goes for you. Have a blessed week, and I look forward to seeing you next week here on Mindful Mondays.